1707. A fleet trusted numbers, the rocks kept count. In October 1707, the Channel learned a new cruelty, numbers that would not agree. Sir Cloudesley Shovell's fleet, association flying his flag, with Eagle, Romney, Firebrand and others, beat home from the Mediterranean into gales that walked west to east like judges with wet sleeves. Latitude was a courtesy the sky could still provide. Longitude was a quarrel among guesses. Dead reckoning, log line, traverse table, prayers. The lunar distances would not settle. Compasses sulked, their cards vexed by the iron about them. The wind veered, the sea made stares, and every course laid in the forenoon looked impertinent by dusk. Fog lay down and stood up again. Soundings became scripture. Leadsmen sang depth to the ship's heave, and a half-6, by the mark 7, until the rope came up gritty with ground that did not belong where the plotting room had placed it. Currents, the set and drift, scribbled their own notes in the fleet's arithmetic. A pilot swore Ushant lay off the larboard beam. Another mouthed "silly" and let the word die like a blasphemy against hope. Canvas thudded, yards complained, and somewhere in the line, a bell struck wrong and corrected itself in a cold hurry. Shovell, who trusted discipline more than rumor, ordered the line ahead and the lanterns kept close. In the Admiral's cabin, the chart bristled with pins, yet the candle trembled as if a hand breathed on it. The hourglasses turned with precision. The bells struck 8s for a day that would not survive itself. Toward evening, rain erased the horizon, and the fleet sailed into a room with no walls. On quarterdecks, men felt the tide lean them north, while their needles insisted otherwise. The master wrote a single nervous line in the night order book. Keep the lead going. And sand gritted the page where his cuff had tried to dry it. Hammocks swung like punctuation beneath an unfinished sentence. Above, gulls from nowhere circled and departed as if the chart had offended them. The sky carried no stars. The sea carried its own few. Between the two, the Isles of Scilly waited where mathematics said they were not. The warning, if there was one, came like most mercies, late and ill-welcome. A quartermaster from the West Country, who knew Scilly under a keel as a man knows bones in his hand, asked permission to speak. He said the set was wrong, the soundings false friends, the smell of weed and broken shell too near for Ushant. Officers do not love geography delivered by noses. Some swore the man later swung from a yard for insolence. Others that Shovell heard him out and kept his course, because a fleet will not follow a hunch. Both versions carry a sorrow that fits the night. Toward 8 o'clock, the rain knitted itself into curtains. Lanterns showed to leeward like a procession of moons. On association, the master paced between binnacle and door, hand on the compass hood as if steadying a drunk. The Admiral could not ask the stars. Cloud had eaten them. He asked the bell. It answered. He asked the glass. It shivered and returned its sand. On the weather bow, there was the feel of land, like a cellar sensed before it is smelled. Leadsmen called, "By the deep," and their words broke on rock they could not see. The first strike sounded not like catastrophe, but like a slow, honest knock. Oak greeting granite. Association lifted, turned a fraction, and took the second blow along her belly. men ran with training and arrived with fear. A forecastle lantern wrote a wide O in the air and went out. The pumps began a rhythm that a hymn might have envied. Eagle and Romney, lured by example, came on into the same arithmetic. Firebrand, smaller and stubborn, found a momentary purchase and glanced off into blackness already wet with wreck. Signals shrilled and vanished. The Admiral's crew tried to cut the longboat free. The falls jammed as if with malice. A wave larger than religion arrived and carried men, orders, and the whole argument about longitude into a single cold solution. The fleet had found its shore, and the Isles of Scilly learned 4 new names for one night. Night, piece by piece, became wreckage. Association broke her back on the Gilston and went in 2 thoughts, fore and aft, arguing only long enough to drown both. Men rose with splinters, lantern glass, a coil of line that remembered its duty, and were swept clean again. Eagle found hard ledge in a blink. Romney, stouter, took her wound lower and rolled once like a bull asked an impossible question. Firebrand struck and slithered off, rudder crippled, pumps going, her master hunting the dark for a mercy shaped like sand. From St. Agnes and Annette, the islanders saw a geography made of lights, flares and masthead lamps, brief galaxies going out. Boats put off because habit is braver than sense. Some found only oil and the flat thud of spars. Some dragged 3 men over each gunwale and lost 2 back to the same wave. A boy rowing with his father felt a body strike the keel and could name the beat it made for years. By dawn, the tide had unloaded its proofs. Casks, hammocks, a speaking trumpet, a silver spoon, a patch of scarlet cloth like a wound that had learned to float. On the western rocks, a gentleman lay with a ring that would start a story and a face the parish register would write as unknown. Firebrand fetched up half alive in Periglis Bay, grounded by Providence or mathematics finally remembering its debt. A dozen men crawled out of her and went to their knees on weed-slick stone, sicker with relief than with brine. They were given hot stones wrapped in cloth, then broth, then sleep, in that order which fits all disasters. In cottages, the island women unpicked uniforms, while the men said nothing useful and mended oars. Parson wrote sober lines for the drowned and more sober ones for those who went straight back to sea to save what else could be saved. Anchors, cordage, powder, the names of the lost. By sunset, smoke drifted from 2 places, the island cook fires and the headlands where driftwood burned a signal to ships that might still be persuaded to live. Every catastrophe breeds a smaller, portable one, a tale fit for a pocket. On Scilly, it was a ring, green as a drowned leaf, that the islanders said belonged to the Admiral. One story made it mercy. A woman found Sir Cloudesley ashore, alive, offered water, and saw on his hand a stone too grand for any parish. She took it after he died to pay the debt that storms right against roofs. Another made it theft. A corpse rifled at midnight, the ring later traced by a jeweler. The thief tried and punished. A third, muttered by men who dislike endings, said a surgeon twisted the ring off to learn a size and returned it. The gossip forgot the return and kept the twist. All versions begin with the same fact: a green fire on a dead hand, and the human desire to make it explain everything. The parish registers wrote only what they must. They counted burials where bodies were had, and wrote supposed where the sea kept its claim. On St. Mary's, women washed bundles of scarlet cloth and said no name while they wrung. A boy kept the Admiral's dog for a winter and taught it a new shore. It ran the cliffs, searching a ladder that was not there. In London, pamphlets bloomed like weeds, maps that pretended certainty, sermons that took longitude as a parable of pride. A print showed the association breaking and a shore crowded with villains. A second edition added a weeping Britannia to make it sell in better streets. The ring, real or apocryphal, did not prevent the sea from remaining the sea. It glittered in talk and later glinted in a case, emerald winking under glass, while docents practiced a polite caution, traditionally associated. Meanwhile, the headlands kept their low, permanent sermon. Wind moving grass in a single direction, the crash that wears stone thinner than memory, and a tide that rehearses the night as if it liked the story very much and meant to tell it again. After the burials came the bills, and after the bills, Parliament. The disaster printed itself on London's conscience in figures: ships lost, guns gone, men drowned beyond counting. Merchants found that grief sharpens arithmetic. Longitude, which had been a gentleman's debate conducted over port and ephemerides, became a national appetite. In 1714, the Board of Longitude was proposed, as blunt and hopeful as a public prayer with money in it. Find a method to know a ship's east-west with the certainty of latitude. The kingdom will pay as if for a miracle. Proposals arrived like weather. Astronomers offered the moon and its distances, a geometry beautiful enough to forgive its clouds. Mathematicians promised improved tables and better dead reckoning, as if faith might be taught to keep to a line. From Yorkshire, a carpenter named John Harrison sent clocks, first wood, then brass, whose hearts kept time while the world stumbled. His sea watch, no larger than a fist that has learned patience, persuaded longitude to behave long enough for a captain to believe. Each device, each table, each rule was a way of arguing with the night off. Silly. None of it returned association or made the parish list shorter. But the sea's map acquired numbers that stayed where they were put, and the lanes to and from the channel grew less murderous. Lighthouses shouldered higher, Eddystone rebuilt again, and later, Bishop Rock standing like a punctuation mark that the sea must read. In the Admiralty, a clerk drew a thin cross beside the Isles and wrote in a hand that wasted no curve, "Wrecks of 1707. Ships thereafter passed that margin with a caution that looked like superstition and was, in fact, memory-wearing useful clothes. The board awarded prizes slowly, grudgingly, but the habit of asking the right question survived. How to keep ships from coming to the same night with mathematics that say otherwise. The sea forgets in one language and remembers in another. In 1967, divers working a rough patch south of Bishop Rock found coins skittering along the bottom like bright fish that had learned dates. 1703, 1705, 1707. Cannon lay half swallowed in kelp beds. A bell slept with its mouth full of silt. A silver hilt peered from sand like a moon rising behind weather. The charts called the reef Gilstone still. The islanders called the place by older names that did not require ink. They worked between swells, equal parts archaeologist and thief held in check, measuring what could be measured and leaving what could not be carried without shame. A plate stamped with a crowned G traveled to a museum with the care given relics. Other pieces were left where they had chosen to become true. The water had made alliances, iron with weed, wood with shell, and would not stand for too much improvement. A logbook raised intact dissolved to lace in air, reminding men that some texts prefer pressure and dark. One diver, a practical man, surfaced and found his watch 2 minutes slow, which meant nothing and felt like news. On shore, catalogers with clean hands wrote labels for the drowned century. Fragment, probable association. Cannon, recovered under license. Coin cluster, provenance to bishops and clerks. In cases, greened metal learned to bloom anew under lighting designed to flatter confession. Visitors pressed breath to glass and left ovals that needed wiping with the same cloth used for the Admiral's ring in other rooms. The islanders watched all this and went back to their boats in weather that continues to write its own entries. At low tide, they still pick up lead, oak buttons, a spoon with its bowl bent, and sometimes a shard that has forgotten whether it was ship or shore. They throw most of it back. The sea keeps its archives best when consulted but not robbed. Today the track past Scilly is a corridor of obedience. GPS murmurs, radar paints its harmless ghosts, and the Bishop Rock light writes a steadier grammar on weather than any parson manages on sin. Yet fog still lifts the old room without walls, and a swell from the Atlantic still rehearses the night's lesson against granite. Charts print a small cross west of St. Agnes, and a notation that wastes no ink. 1707. On calm evenings, the mark looks ceremonial. In rough ones, it looks like a closed mouth. The Navy keeps Shovell's name on lists and hulls. The island keeps smaller names in church glass and stones. In a drawer, a parish retains a dog tag with letters nearly gone. A boy's descendants bring it out when the wind is northeast and put it away when the kitchen grows quiet. Guides point from Garrison Hill to where association turned argument into evidence, and visitors nod the way people nod at distances that cannot be walked. In London, a lock of seagrass caught in a case corner points always west, because someone sneezed once and the museum preserved the direction. Stand on the heather above Periglis, and the ocean folds into its long arithmetic. Sets and drifts, long period waves writing their sums under a slap of chop. A gull needles the wind and declines to explain. The rock smells clean, the kelp fumes as if cooked. If the tide is right, you can hear the bishop's bell moan in a key that might be history. You can count 8 seconds between flashes. You can keep your own time and still feel 2 minutes go loose around dusk. When night has arranged itself, the water throws back a few obedient stars. The rest belong to the sea. Ships pass, their bridge windows lit like small moving chapels. No voices, only a low, regular wash, and under it, the steady pencil of the lead as it writes the same soundings men once sang to save themselves.